Hi, and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. Today, I have got the very inspiring Jason Shiers with us. And Jason is somebody who I came across only in the last couple of months. Just suddenly entered my awareness, and I started listening to his podcast, which was um, really insightful. And I really was drawn to his story, which is around there's a whole journey around addiction. And obviously, I'm not going to say too much about that because I'll hand over to Jason to tell us what that is. But I, for many years in my 20s, worked with homeless people and worked with people with addictions. And something that I saw over and over again was that hopelessness that these people that I worked with had just lost all hope, that they had given up. And so when I heard Jason's story, I just thought it would be such an interesting one to bring to you, in the hopes that you will see that it isn't all hopeless, it isn't all lost. If you do find yourself with an addiction, and that could be any kind of addiction, um, that's not the end point, and that there is hope and light, I guess. So I'm going to hand over to Jason. If you want to just share a little bit about kind of where you were, what happened that made you end up in the situation you were in. I think that would be a really great place to sort of start.
Yeah. Um, but like I will do, but I really like when you said the word hopelessness, I kind of like, I just love to say a little bit about that before I start, but because it just really struck me, I kind of thought about January and hopelessness, and I thought January was like the month of hope, it was kind of like, it's like Christmas, it's all over now because the holidays would always be a difficult time while, you know, trying to manage an addiction, I guess you would call it, at the time. um, Typically a time of a lot of depression and a lot of suffering and a lot of withdrawal and a lot of struggle and either that or being locked up or something crazy. But and January was always like, right, it's kind of like New Year's resolution, time to change, and there was that little spark and glimmer of hope, at the start of the month where this could be it, this could be the time, it could be different, but pretty much every time within 2 days or maybe less, it would be back into the despair and hopelessness, of just thinking that whatever it is, no matter how much I try and take my body in one direction, my mind wants to go in another, and that's like, that was the, I guess that was the story, that was the story, for me. There was that, um, I remember like physically trying to walk my body in one direction, and my mind wanting to go in a different direction. And it was a day that I was going to commit a crime to get money for drugs, and it was like, I remember like, I can actually remember the road. It doesn't exist anymore. It's not there. I got knocked down and got houses built on it. I can remember the road where I was, how old I was. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to walk my body the other way. And it was like, my body was going one way and my mind was going the other, and it was like eventually that this physical urge came over me so strong, and this is so clear to me, and it must have been at least 30 years ago, it's kind of like, but I remember this urge came over my physical body so strong that I just had to follow it, I had to turn around and go back to committing the crime that I didn't really want to commit. And it was like, that's kind of a lot of what it was like, it was just like doing things against my will. I mean, it didn't start that way, but that's kind of where it ended up, like just doing things against my will. um Going backwards from there, it was like my dad was killed in an accident when I was young. And from there, it was like I was pretty much left to my own devices, and as children, we're so super resilient and we're so able to find ways to cope with anything. And just quite often that those ways are not socially acceptable or as good behaving children would do. It's kind of like, because we're just finding ways to cope. We don't know the difference between right and wrong. We just find ways to get through it, because that's what all children can do. That's the innate resilience that's within us. That's the capacity of any child to find a way to cope with anything, any situation. And I never saw that as wisdom at the time, unfortunately, society, psychology, psychiatry, have labeled those things that children do, which are just their innate resilience, without guidance, as eating disorders, mental health conditions, and a long list of things that are then actually created into be something wrong with us, So food was my friend, like the escape of food, like helped me cope with my emotions, helped me cope with my aloneness, with my feeling of just being lost in the world, where had my dad gone, what had happened, and how come my mum didn't even speak to me about it, because she was coping with it in her way, and I was coping with it in my way, and her way was work and escapism, and my way was food and escapism, Um, so I'd learned how to cope with this feeling that was going on inside of me, this experience that I was having, not consciously. I didn't like go, oh God, I'm feeling bad. I know I'm going to eat food. It was literally like just came in a way that food looked really appealing and interesting. And I would eat as much of it as I could. To the point where my weight ballooned, and I gained weight a stone a year from when I was 5 until I was 25. When I was 25, I was 25 stone. Even right through my addiction, I've gained weight because I used to take drugs and it wasn't enough. And after I took drugs, I used to shoplift food and chocolate and cakes and sweets, and I used to eat them all, every single day. So yeah, so like the progression, it was like from food to drugs. Wasn't much alcohol really. It was just straight into drugs. I mean, just wrong people, wrong time, right people, right time. Who knows? Maybe the universe was conspiring to lead me to an awakening. But finding heroin at a young age, was my story. And then between that time of finding food and taking drugs, I'd been completely off key. It's kind of like I'd done some amazing things. I'd got a full scholarship at a private school, because I was so clever. But I'd also been sent to psychiatric services and put on antidepressant medication at 10 years old, because I was in such an up and down, all over the place state. And I was committing crime, being brought home by the police, stealing from home, doing it. I was really like out of control, outrageous, really. So drugs were the solution. They were, now they look like, the management of the symptom, it's kind of like of a misunderstanding. And that's kind of how I see it. So the actual putting chemicals in my body was the solution to my busy mind. At the time I had a busy mind. I had a lot of thinking about myself, I had a lot of thinking about the world. I had a lot of thinking about where I thought I should be, how I thought I should be, who I thought I was, like as in my physical body, my physical size, and the things that I'd been doing, the crazy things that I'd been doing, to escape, and all the judgment and shame and all the psychiatric diagnoses that I'd had and conditions that I'd been told I had and all these things. So I'd carried all that around with me. So I had a lot of thinking about all these different things. So drugs just took that away. It's kind of like really that simple. It's kind of like that, having a busy mind, a lot of thinking about all those things. And for the first time I took heroin and it was like, it went away. It went quiet. There was no thinking. There was no busy mind anymore. There was that ability that I have now, to just sit and go, that's not my reality. That's not my world. It's kind of like, that's not what I need to respond to in life. But at that time, it looked like those were all things that, like the overweightness, the shame, the guilt, the who I was, who I thought I was, what I thought I needed to do to be okay. All those looked like real life circumstances that I had to manage, So like, for sure, taking drugs was a good way of escaping from that. When it looks like that's true, it looks like I've got to lose 10 stone. It looks like I've got to deal with all the shame and guilt, all the theft, all the financial amends that I've done. I need to change myself to be much better. I need to get all these things at the ages of 14, 15 that I thought I had to do just to be okay. you know. Um, so yeah, why wouldn't I take drugs? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
why wouldn't I escape that? You
Like
know?
that's wisdom in action there, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
you can say whatever you want to about addictions, but it still points to the same thing, that it's a way of coping. It's wisdom. It's the
exactly.
thing to do in that moment that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like it's just as you said, wisdom in action. It's kind of like we find as adults, young adults, as adults, we find a way of coping with something, you know, and it's kind of like that. You know, some people just find that way of coping. You know, I just found that way of coping. It had, you know, had gone from food to stealing to crime to drugs. You know, it just progressed in that way. Um, yeah, I mean, it was destructive. You know, it was destructive. It was just completely destructive of all relationships. It was destructive of my own life, of myself. You know, of my own physical body, of my own mental health. You know, it was destructive in every way. You know what I did for those years, committing crime, going to jail, taking drugs, getting out, committing crime, taking drugs, going to jail. You know, in an endless loop. Um, you know, and I was sick of it, you know, for a long time. You know, I was sick of what I was doing, but I just didn't know how to change that. I didn't know how to escape that. I didn't know how to, um, you know, I ended up going to rehab because it looked like, because I mean, it's interesting because it's like that was just what people did. You know, if you had a drug problem, you went to rehab. You know, it was kind of 12 steps of AA was big enough in the UK, but of Narcotics Anonymous, you know, like for people with drug problems, it wasn't that big at the time. You know, it was new in the Northwest. This was in the 90s. And so I went to rehab and I was introduced to 12-step meetings. And I, you know, naively, because I didn't know, because in rehab, nobody taught me who I really was. Nobody taught me about my thinking and how it created the world that I lived in. Nobody taught me that, you know, that the story of my dad, like keeping that it was me keeping that alive, that it was me keeping that pain and suffering, and it was me creating that, you know, that which I was escaping from, you know. So what they told me was that, you know, I had this childhood trauma and mental health diagnosis, and that I was an addict and that I would be an addict for the rest of my life. And naively, I believed all those things. You know, I kind of thought, okay, well, these guys are the experts and it must be true. You know, I must have this thing called the disease of addiction and I must be broken and damaged. And it makes sense because of all the things that I'd done. You know, it's kind of like, and the stuff that they gave me, the writing, the printouts, the books to read, kind of fitted my behavior. You know, but I was never pointed beyond that. You know, I was never pointed what's beyond our psychology, um, what's true for everyone. You know, where's the mental health that I was born with? Because innocently, you know, they didn't know that. The people who
Yeah,
were there to help me didn't know. You know, they knew to the level that they knew, in the same way that I knew to the level I knew when I was not pointed in that direction. Um, so yeah, I that was a new belief. It was what I call a better lie than the one I had. You know, it was a better lie about um, because it enabled me to change my, you know, it enabled me not to kill myself, basically, because that's the path that I was on. You know, the path of destruction. And so I went to meetings. You know, I was a good 12-step recovering addict. You know, I said I'm an addict every day, and I adopted the belief. And I thought the limitations of my happiness and life were all about the way that I work the 12-step program. You know, and if I could just get it right, you know, if I could just get it right, then I would be happy. You know, so I was still a seeker. You know, I still had that
yeah,
sense of emptiness inside, that sense of seeking, and and I did that for so long. I did that for 2 decades, you know,
wow,
and never ever found what I was looking for. You know, never found that. Um, after about I don't know actually, after about 10 years maybe of that, you know, I found therapy. You know, I kind of thought, well, the 12 steps are not really working, and I was always in that question: is it me?
Yeah.
Is it 12 steps doesn't work, or is it me? So so I knew, I knew there was something more than that. I guess when I talk about that today, I talk about it from a place of like that seeking is our knowing that there is home. Home is there, home is available to us. There is a place called home. There is a place where we can feel like we've made it, we've found it, we've got what we were looking for. That is available, and it's within all of us. Yet I just didn't know that at the time, so I was looking outside of myself unknowingly, and no one ever guided me back inside of myself. um
But you still knew, like you say then,
yeah,
even through that time, you knew that there was something else. Like there was the 12 steps that kind of did a certain amount, but it was still, there was a knowing beyond that, that there was something else.
yeah, for sure. Deeper knowing, deeper guidance of home being available. And I remember in Solstice they used to be critical of seeking. Oh, you need to stop seeking. This is it. This is what you've been looking for. You need to stop. And it was like seeking was seen as a bad thing. That or it was seen as your addict, as if that was a separate persona. A part of you that was
Right.
kind of like broken or undescribable. But um, so yeah, I found therapy. And I ended up training as a therapist. I spent many years in that, and I went through. Um, I mean, there's so much to my life, so many things that happened, but like I'd um, always been told, that all the stuff that I'd run away from, the death of my dad, all the things that I'd struggle with, all my eating, the loss of my mum somewhat, because she was there physically, but she like there was a real disconnection of emotional relationship. But like I had to deal with all those things. That's what I was told when I went to therapy, and it was kind of like, and I spent all these years as a therapist and training, in so many different modalities of therapy. I've got a long list of psychological credentials, um, and it was painful. I went through depression. I started to get anxiety. I mean, I couldn't get on a plane without Valium, without diazepam.
Yeah.
When I was in the middle of in my master's training as a therapist, it's kind of like and I'd never been anxious. I'd never needed any medication for anxiety in my life, but it just happened midway through that. And it just kind of makes sense now that digging into all that stuff on a consistent basis, week after week, trying to fix the past, looking at my relationship with my dad, what happened, how I felt, afterwards, all the things I did in childhood to escape, through the lens of there being something wrong with me.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was doing. That's what I was doing every week. And I was encouraged to feel the feelings of loss and sadness and so on. And it's like, and what I noticed was that my own mental health deteriorated. It just kind of, I was so depressed. I didn't want to get out of bed. I was so anxious. I couldn't get on a plane. I had to take medication. It was such a dark time for me during that 4 years that training was. Um, and it came to the end, I guess, and it was like, we was all like at the end of this training, the people that made it, because not surprisingly, many people dropped out.
Yeah.
Maybe that was their wisdom, because it was very experiential.
Yeah.
And it was like, right, you're ready to go and open a practice now. And I thought, how can I? That's already been practicing. I've been working with people with addictions for years and years. Ever since the start, I started like, it may have been just helping one person, but like that developed over time. But like I thought to myself, well, how can I point anyone else to happiness? How can I? It's kind of like I feel fraudulent because my own addiction had gone in multiple ways from there. I stopped taking drugs and alcohol, but it become money, relationships, the gym, weight loss, porn, anything. The list of things was endless. And it was like, and I thought, I just thought I can't point anyone else to their. I didn't think about it in these terms, but like I can't point anyone else to their well-being. I can't point anyone else to where their peace of mind comes from. There was something inside me that still knew that there was something beyond that, you know. So that seeking, it was still there, and from there I got into the world of personal development. I did all of Tony Robbins stuff. I walked on hot coals. I went to America doing his 18-hour day seminars. I did the Hoffman process, which was like an intense cathartic release type thing over 8 days. I trained in NLP, I trained in CBT and different things. I did like an endless list of things trying to find this place of um, peace or comfort or happiness or joy that I thought, it all looked like it was on the outside of me, I could get the right money, get the right clients, get the right business, change myself enough, then I'd be okay.
Yeah.
So I was searching and all those
Very
things.
familiar.
Yeah. Um, and it was funny, about I told Michael this story, but like I was after I did Tony Robbins, I would join this personal development group, and that I mean, it was quite funny, that Tony Robbins things, because everyone's high-fiving each other, saying how they're going to do wonderful things every day, and they've got these morning routines, getting all charged up for the day and stuff like that. And I joined this WhatsApp group with one of those type of groups where there was about 100 people all doing this, and every morning there'd be hundreds of messages, about all this, people recording themselves screaming and doing all sorts of stuff and jumping up and down and bouncing and singing, every day at 5 a.m. I was crazy. But like my job was, because I worked in IT, because I'd built a career in IT alongside all this, was to pirate some content. Someone had given me a login for a website, and one of the things on there was Michael Neal, The Path of Effortless Change. And because I really wanted to, I had this desperate desire to belong, to fit in, it was like that. I thought, I've got to get this video somehow and share it with all these people, because they'll like me then, and so I couldn't find a way to get it, so I thought, well, I'm going to screen record it and watch it. It's the only way I can do it. So I ended up screen recording this video of Michael Neal, The Path of Effortless Change. And like every time I was working here, like on my desk now, and I had my little laptop screen recording this video, and it was playing all day long, because it was like an 8-hour course or something. And I just kept finding myself mesmerized by it and watching it. And I get quite touched by that, because I just think, how did that happen? How did that coincidence happen that I got to something inside of me, kind of knew there was something there. There was something really important for me to hear, in those words. And I didn't know what it was, and that's always been the case, where my intellect catches up way later than that part in me, that place in me that knows the truth, when it hears it. And it wasn't for a while after that, but I was got again, another nudge, from the direction of the universe, was that I was going to LA. I'd gone off in my personal development world. I'd thought nothing more of the video. I'd kind of thought about it now and again, but I was going to LA to do a different coaching program. And I kind of, for some reason, Michael Neal came into my head, and I thought, that guy, Michael Neal, he lives in LA, doesn't he? So let's see what he's up to. And I looked, and he had this intensive on 2 days after the course that I was doing ended. I thought, wow, it's kind of like, how is that happening on that same day? And it was like, so I ended up there. I thought, I've got to go. Now I've got to go. And yeah, I guess I arrived there, like with my years of intellectual knowledge of therapy, training, long list of credentials, thinking I knew everything about change, thinking that it took a long time, thinking that we were all broken, and that, we needed to, like the therapy training that I had, that was kind of where my head was at with change. And I didn't know how to listen as I know now. I kind of thought I knew how to listen, and I turned up like a good student with my notebook and pen, and ready to get all this, because it cost me quite a lot of money, and it's kind of like ready to get all this information that I needed, in order to fix myself. And And at the start of that, I remember, this is an invitation that I give to my own clients, but it's kind of like, it's really about how to hear something different. And Michael gave that to me when I was first there, and he spotted it, and he said to me, can you just listen without trying to work out if this is right or wrong, without trying to see if this fits into something, without trying to see if this is going to help you change, and for me as well, without trying to see if you're getting your money's worth. It's kind of like, because all those things were there. That's why I was ready and armed. And for whatever reason in that moment, I was kind of like, I put the book down, and I said, okay, I'm just gonna see if there's something different to hear, because I guess I'd realized, in that split moment, that whatever I'd done so far hadn't given me what I wanted. Um, there wasn't time to think. I didn't sort of sit and weigh that up to see if it was a good idea or anything. It just happened in that moment. Um, so yeah, in my mind, before I'd got there, I was kind of spinning I call it spinning plates, relationship plate, the weight loss plate, the financial plate, and that's what my life was like. It was stressful. I struggle with relationships, struggle with my weight, I struggle with um, money, clients, business, all those things. And it was like, and I remember at the end, 3 days, I mean, I say 3 days, it was probably more like about 8 hours over 3 days. It wasn't a long time, because that was one of my bugbears, was that, I'm paying a lot of money for this, and we're getting long breaks, and we're having 3 breaks as well as this thing, and we're only here from that means we're only here 3 hours, a day. I was thinking, how can you learn anything in 3 hours? I'd been at Tony Robbins where it was 18-hour days. It's kind of like, so it was an extreme difference. And I remember at the end of those 3 days, I'd hired this Airbnb, and it had this beautiful view out the back with a kind of rope swing, like one of those little wide bench swings, and that you get in the
Oh, yeah.
garden. It was like I was sat on one of those, and I was just looking out over this green valley in LA in Woodland Hills, and I was kind of feeling such a sense of peace. And I just thought, I don't know what's changed. I don't know what's changed. It was like I just thought, I feel so peaceful, like nothing seems to matter. All the things that I thought were important, all the I was going through it, and I was thinking, well, I haven't got more money in the bank, haven't got any relationships, certainly haven't lost weight, over these 3 days. And it's kind of like, but it all seems just not to be important, And over time that's caught up with me, made more sense, but that felt experience of my world as I thought it was collapsing, that was just made of thought, everything that I thought was a problem, everything that I thought was something to manage, everything that, that I explain it like with clients, it's like that. I've got this idea of who I think I am, and I've got this idea of where I think I need to be, and all my suffering is here, in between, and it's kind of like, and what happened was the gap just closed, like that. And then I've got this like idea of where I think I need to be in the world, what I need to have outside of me, and this imaginary idea of what I think I've got, and that gap just closed too, because I just kind of thought life is now, life is here in the present moment, life is always happening now, and I'm somewhere else. I'm in the past, the future. Maybe if I can get this, if I can close this gap, it's kind of like, then I'm going to have some sense of peace, some sense of joy. And I had that realization that all those things that I ever wanted, all that joy, contentment, peace of mind, security, security was a big one, because we talked about this imaginary number in the bank that created security, and it was like, and the realization that I'd spent my whole life financially insecure with money in the bank, and thinking that if I got more, I would be okay, but realizing that I'd always been okay. I'd always felt financially insecure. I'd always thought I needed more money. I'd never got the more money, and I'd always been okay anyway. So it was kind of like that. I was thinking, there's something not right about that. It's kind of like, just doesn't even make, like, to the intellectual, logical mind, it doesn't even make sense. There's something to question, to see in that. I had all started to have all these insights, about different areas of my life, um, and I started waking up joyful, and feeling peaceful and feeling like, and then, I knew in those 3 days, I knew two things. I knew that this was the thing that I was looking for, and it was myself. That was the finding, and that there was nothing else. That the search was over. I knew that. I also knew that I couldn't practice psychotherapy anymore. I knew that after £50,000 and 10 years of training in different modalities of psychological and a long list of certificates, I knew that it was all redundant. I knew. And I didn't know what I would do. I didn't know how it would work. I didn't know how I would help people, but I knew, and from then, to now, which was a few years, um, it's been a mind blowing, um, life evolving, opening, of love and connection and freedom, just like all my addictions, my food, um, relationship with food and eating disorders and so on changed a few months after that, to the point where it's been stable ever since. I don't really think about it. And it's like, it just literally evaporated. Um, and my relationship with my kids, is so present, so willing, so vulnerable, so just I'm so happy about it, about the way things are, and my work with people, my work with people is I don't have to tell people that, oh, that's a bad one. You're going to have to spend years in therapy, to fix that. I noticed that within a few sessions with people, they get this feeling and understanding of truth of who they are, and that how their reality is created in their mind, and like they start to see things differently as I did, and um, have some beautiful, beautiful connections and relationships with people. And it's all I ever wanted, it's all I ever looked for, it's all I ever searched for. It's, because the truth of it is that like all those years that I was looking was that everything I ever wanted was already there. And I just didn't see that at the time. I was blinded, by, and I guess it was somewhat perpetuated innocently, like by well-meaning people that tried to point me in the direction of well-being, being outside of myself, in practices, in theories, in frameworks, in sharing, in whatever it was that they pointed me to, that um, they thought was where well-being was. They were just trying to help me from my own suffering, but they just didn't know where to look, as the same way that as I did as a therapist when I talked to people about their relationship with their parents and thought that there was some answer in the past, and I innocently did that too, for people. um so what's cool about that, I guess, is that that experience, those experiences that I had in that and those trainings as a therapist were were not wasted, because they really gave me that insight of seeing the process of change from a psychological point of view within myself and within my clients, and what happens now. It's kind of like, which is night and day difference. It also has given those credentials, have opened so many doors in my world of addiction, working with addictions and stuff, like where people pay attention just because I've got those credentials. Now, I think that's just utter bullshit. It's kind of like, it's it's laughable, the fact of like how it works, in the system, in the kind of like the way that people listen. But um, I think bow to the knowledge of the universe that seemed to know better than me, that sent me on that path, and kind of gave me that those credentials that do open doors and sort of allow me to create content and put my stuff out there and for people to listen. So yeah, and life now is kind of um, it's magical. It's kind of like, another thing, I guess, that a big thing, well, two big things, I think. One is the unknown, and I guess it's a good little subject because of the pandemic, currently, and things like that. It's kind of like the big realization was that all of life is unknown. It's always unknown. And we think that the known, I thought, and a lot of people do seem to think, it's a common misunderstanding that known is about circumstantial surroundings, like could be even relationships, and it could be work, and it could be things that are around us, physical things that we own, and stuff like that. And we get sort of somewhat, we get caught in the illusion of this comfort, this comfort that we've built around us with all these things. And that if we keep doing this same thing, if I keep, so people get fearful of leaving jobs and leaving relationships and so on. It's like, if we keep doing this same thing, if I keep going to this job, if I stay in this relationship, even though I'm unhappy, if I do all these things, then I've got certainty, and if I've got certainty, at least I know what I'm getting, it's kind of like, and that keeps us in some false sense of like, okay, I can cope with that.
But
It's
even
kind of like,
bad, which is the
yeah,
very interesting thing, isn't it? It can be all of that can be really bad, but it's safe because you know.
yeah, it's safe. Yeah, like we'll put up with safety because safety seems, that's the thing. Safety seems to come from that, and it's kind of like, and it's like what safety is more important, than any of the other things. So it's like we stay in that, and what the pandemic brought was the realization of that. Well, we can cope with anything. It's kind of like that. If you would have done a survey on the whole world, like, right, if the world shuts down tomorrow, and everyone gets locked in, who's gonna cope? How will your businesses go? All those things. Everyone would have like gone disastrous. I couldn't cope, and I could never do that. Yeah, everyone did. Not everyone did. Everyone found ways of, to tap into that infinite creativity, into that infinite potential that's inside of us, into that sense of well-being that's there regardless of how the external circumstances is. And the gift is that we got to see that certainty and comes from inside of us, from our ability to respond to anything that happens on the outside, not from the actual outside circumstances. And I hope, I don't know how many people got that gift, but I'm sure many people can reflect on their experience and see how something beyond what they thought they knew showed up for them, and they found ways of creating, of being, of surviving, of thriving, in a world of unknown circumstances, and realize that certainty doesn't come from what's outside of you or what you've got. It comes from that place inside of you that just knows how to respond no matter what's happening. Um, so addiction, going back, we started at addiction, but we ended up, here, and it's kind of like, um, didn't seem like a good idea anymore. It's kind of like, that's the freedom, that in my work now, is that people don't have to take on the label of addict, and they don't have to admit that they're broken and go to meetings and do practices in order to be okay. They just know that they are, the same way that I know that I am, and doing anything to fix my experience doesn't seem like a good idea anymore. It just literally doesn't feel like something I would want to do, you know. Um, and the last thing, creativity, is kind of like that, or maybe not the last thing, but like something that springs to mind is that, um, the infinite creativity is that, like, what came out of all that stuff when I was stuck, when I thought I was stuck, and I spent my life living in my thoughts, I spent my whole waking day caught up in my thinking about the life that I thought I lived, that there's no room for creativity in there. There's no room for expansion. There's no room for um, seeing wisdom coming into your day all day, every day, seeing opportunity coming into your day all day, every day, seeing everything that's put in front of you as potential, as something new, as an opportunity to explore, as interesting. So, and it's like, so I went from these days where it was kind of like, oh God, here we go, another day, I've got to get up, got to go to work, to these days of waking up, going, well, I have absolutely no clue what's going to happen today. I have no clue who I'm going to meet, and no clue what conversation I'm going to have. How exciting is that? It's kind of like, how exciting is it that I get to live every day not knowing, and also that it can only be good. You know, it's kind of like only cool things can happen. You know, only new adventures can happen. Only exciting stuff can happen. And and following that, you know, because then when you're like that, you know, when you're open to life, you know, when you're creating that life of joy, of contentment, opportunities are coming all the time. It's kind of like new people, new conversations that are taking you off on paths, and finding new connections, finding new opportunities all the time. And it's kind of like, oh, that's like a magical adventure versus a you know, a dark, waking up to a dark cloud. You know, it's night and day difference, you know.
Absolutely. And I think what was interesting there, like, there might be people saying, yeah, but I wake up and this really awful things happened, or that, something. And it's not like the end of any trouble in life, but I guess it's seeing that, like you were saying before, that the only problem is that which is created in your mind about that thing. It's the judgment about what it is that's showing up in life. I think your story shows so beautifully that, when we struggle with what is, like what was happening for you, it seems like for so much of your life, it was a struggle against what was presenting itself to you day by day. And that over the last few years, that struggle's fallen away as you've seen that it's life. You've kind of embraced it as just what's happening in this moment now. And that's not something that's going to continue to happen. The moment's going to change every moment.
Yeah, it's like when you said it, it came to mind. It's like we live in the little picture versus the big picture. You know, it's kind of like we get caught up in the things of the moment versus seeing what that opportunity. I mean, that's like what I've seen lately. You know, what I've been seeing fresh more lately is like that is the gift in everything. You know, and it's kind of like that thing that we wake up to that is a circumstantial challenge to be resolved in the moment. You know, it's kind of like it's an opportunity to see our own creativity. It could be an opportunity for anything. You know, all these things happen. You know, things that, and by this I mean like when people say, "Oh my God, I've lost my job," I'm like, amazing. You know, it's kind of like what could come next. You know, it's kind of like because we've just built it, we're conditioned. You know, like to see to keep these circumstantial things around us. You know, to get our sense of okayness from, or to make sure that life is working. And it's kind of like, you know, okay, yeah, you don't say great if somebody's suffered a tragedy or a loss or a struggle. You know, it's kind of like, you know, there's no discounting that human to human connection in those circumstances. But like when things like losing jobs and you know, like financial disasters happen, you know, things like problems and stuff like that, it's kind of, what else is there to see in that? You know, like what can I learn from this? Who knows what opportunity it is? Who knows that losing one job isn't opening the door to a conversation with someone that wants someone that's the job of a lifetime? You know, it's kind of like, but we just can't see that when we're caught up in our feelings about things that are happening in the moment, you know?
Absolutely. Wow. Like what a journey. Just an incredible, yeah, an incredible story to share.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, to finish, like, for that person who is struggling in their addiction, in that place that so well. And I mean, I don't know through addiction, but I know that struggle of being just caught in that heavy burden of believing every thought.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
There's definitely no one answer, you know, I know that much. And it's kind of like, I've had so many wonderful conversations with people in that place, you know, and they can go in so many different directions for people to see, you know. And it's that, you know, seeking something, you know, seeking outside of yourself, you know, whether it be in substances, whether it be in spiritual awareness, whether it be an awakening or personal development, is really coming from one place, and that is our knowing of home, our knowing of that there is a home, and that seeking will never end. It cannot be satisfied. It's insatiable, in anything. It's insatiable in relationships, in money, in food, in drugs, in chemicals, in oblivion, in spirituality, in everything. It's only satisfied by our returning to the truth of who we are, in our resting in our knowing, of who we are, in that being present in the moment. And while that is a piece of intellectual advice and kind of useless to anyone who's in it, it's like that's the place to look. It's like that. It's not in the. I guess as an active addict, I was very clever. I was very intellectually clever, and the intellect is what kept me
Mm.
searching for so long. Because I thought I knew. And it's like really about for me surrendering to the idea that I thought I knew, was the answer. Like actually saying, well, perhaps what I know, is perhaps there's something beyond what I know, and I guess it would come down to this, that you don't know what you don't know, and that kind of sounds cool and it's a great spiritual quote and it's kind of throwaway to many people. But like when you really, really think about you don't know what you don't know, I mean, like any amount of any profound words, of what is available to you would be a limitation. Anything I could come up with would be a limitation because I don't know what's available for you. I don't know what's available for anyone. I don't know what's available for me either.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, and if you live life as if you don't know what you don't know, that opens the doors to everything. That opens the doors to potential. It opens the door to waking up with curiosity about what's going to happen. It's like that. It's so different to being in that place of intellectual knowing and defending and searching and so on, and stuff like that. And I think that kind of not knowing what we don't know and really sort of just reflecting on that, what that could mean, is can open so many doors.
Yeah, I love that. The unknown used to be for me a very scary kind of concept of, I needed to know everything. I needed to know the answer because that's kind of what society tells us, isn't it? From a young age, we go to school and we have to learn to know stuff. But one of the biggest things that I've seen for sure is the value in stepping back and just admitting that I don't know. I don't know any of it. I don't know anything for
Yeah.
sure. And in that space, as you say, then you're open, then you're available to see something different, to access that creativity, that resilience, that next step.
Yeah, and feeling the love of the world, that's there all the time. You're feeling the love of the people that are around, being open to loving connections, to um, you're just open then. I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? You're just open to anything, and it's kind of like, and the expansion, like your vision is like that, versus kind of like this, which is when you're closed, this here's the some accumulation of knowledge that I've acquired over the amount of years that I've been together and the study that I've done. It's kind of like, yeah, there's so much more than that. The vastness of infinity, of something that's undescribable. Any words can't just put a limitation to it. And this is where words kind of run out of use, because like I really can't put words to this that make it sound as great as it is. It's kind of like I can just say it as I see it. But when I started to see life that way, that's when things just got so different.
And I think that's probably an amazing place to stop. That we're coming up to an hour of chatting. And I really appreciate the time that you've set aside to share your journey.
Yeah.
Is
No worries.
there Is there a way that people can find out more about you, connect with you, work with you? Can you just let people know how they might be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to hear more and don't really want to speak to me, then they can listen to the podcast, misunderstandingsofthemind.com. There's a lot of conversations of this type on there, of all sorts of different subjects. And my website, that's connected to my website as well, but wideworldcoaching.com. If you want to get in touch with me, there's ways to get in touch with me on there. There's a phone number and email address.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so very much. And I wish you a happy new year. And no doubt our paths will cross at some point in the future.
Yeah, one more thing I add, actually, my new addiction treatment program is called Infinite Recovery, infiniterecovery.co.uk, and that will be launching this year, which is a 28-day immersive process for anyone who's struggling with addiction, to get this understanding. And I'm going to be running those every month, probably starting in the next couple of months, which is a 3 principles based addiction program, which I'm really excited, about.
Yeah.
And it's for any addiction that doesn't require medical intervention. Obviously, if you require medical intervention, you need to seek medical help. But for any process addiction or any addiction that's intermittent or people struggle with, yeah.
Amazing. Wow. I shall keep my eyes peeled for that,
Yeah.
and let people know when it, if you let me know when it's live, then I can obviously tell people
Yeah.
as well.
All right.
Brilliant. Well, thank
Cool.
you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Take
I'd love
care.
to. All right. Take care.
Bye.